Well, we certainly had an interesting Friday when it came to big NFL draft news, didn't we? Holy hell, my goodness. We had not one but two big trades that certainly have shaken up the landscape of the 2021 NFL draft. That's for damn sure, and had some impact on the 2022 and 2023 drafts too. So let's take a look at what all happened here. It all started first with the San Francisco 49ers trading up from number 12 to get to Miami's pick at number 3, and in the process giving up the 12th pick this year, a first rounder next year, a first rounder the year after that, a third rounder next year, all to move 9 spots up in the draft, which we all can figure out why San Francisco made that deal. More on that in a moment. Meanwhile, as that trade happened and now the Dolphins moved back from 3 to 12 and further bolstered their position in future drafts, they then turned around and traded up from 12 to 6 with the Philadelphia Eagles. And for the Eagles to move back 6 spots, they got the 12th pick this year. They got pick number 123, a 4th rounder this year, and get a 2022 first round pick from Miami. They moved back 6 spots in round 1. With that, likely that Miami's not taking a quarterback at 6. Being able to get a future first rounder to move back 6 spots is really, really quality work by the Eagles, believe it or not. But when you look at the Dolphins, like they're playing the long-term game here, that's for sure. They still end up, in the grand scheme of things, they've moved back, for all intents and purposes, they've moved back from 3 to 6. And in the process, they've got a 5th rounder this year, 156, that comes to them. They get San Francisco's 2022 first-round pick. They get third-round pick from San Francisco next year. They get the 2023 first-round pick. So basically to move back 3 spots and for the price of their own first-round pick in next year's draft, they got 2 future firsts from the 49ers and a third-round pick. Holy shit. And when you look at this combination of deals, it feels like it was a 3-team deal, although it technically wasn't. It kind of works out that way. Sometimes you look at these big type of draft trades and you say, does it make sense to trade up? Does it make sense to trade down? And a lot of times it comes down to, what's your target? What did you give up? What's the value that you get in return? Who did you potentially pass on? Who could you have gotten if you had just stayed your ass put or even traded back? Like, there's no sure thing when it comes to the draft. It is absolutely positively a crapshoot, a roll of the dice. But when you look at the fundamentals of this trade for all three teams, you look at this and it feels like it's a big win based off of their circumstances, their situations, their current and future realities. Typically, I would think of this type of deal and I would look at one or the other and I say, what the hell are they doing? Like, why would you do that? Why would you? I don't have any of those questions here. Like, first, for the San Francisco 49ers, it makes sense. It makes all the sense in the world. They know damn good and well that Jimmy Garbage Pail is not the long-term guy, period. They know that. And even 49ers fans that want to believe in it have to come to that realization. He's not that dude. And if he was, they wouldn't have just done this deal. And you would stand to reason that Trevor Lawrence is going to go number 1 to the Jacksonville Jaguars, assuming something doesn't change. Zach Wilson is going to go number 2 to the Jets, unless the Jets want to be all-time historically stupid. Which then, if the 49ers just traded up from 12 to 3 and they get Zach Wilson, they should be doing motherfucking backflips for a decade. But let's say you don't. Lawrence is gone. Wilson is gone. You're looking at 1 to 3 quarterbacks they potentially traded up to get. It's either Trey Lance, Justin Fields, or Mac Jones. And in theory, it could be any of those 3. That said, though, it feels like there was a strategy in place here to jump Atlanta at 4. And you would think maybe with Atlanta they were targeting somebody with the high physical upside of a Trey Lance. So the 49ers felt they needed to go up and get Trey Lance. Now, you could certainly make an argument that it might be a Justin Fields after all. although I would have significant concerns about valuing Justin Fields as third overall based off of what he demonstrated at Ohio State. You could also make an argument here for a Mac Jones and saying that Kyle Shanahan looks at him and sees a Matt Ryan type of quarterback. And he's worked with a Matt Ryan type of quarterback. He's worked with Matt Ryan. He's worked with Kirk Cousins. He's had success in his systems with these types of guys. As a result, he might think that he can work with him, and he wanted to make sure that he could get his guy. Now, personally, for me, the 49ers, you make this type of deal and you give up that much. Let's say that Mac Jones is more Matt Ryan than Kirk Cousins. I tell you what, you get a high-level decade-plus starter in the league, a former league MVP, former conference champion, consistency of results, borderline-ish type of Hall of Fame guy. There are certainly worse things you could do by trading multiple first-round picks in the future away to get a quarterback like that. But to me, when you make that type of splash and that type of move, you're gambling on somebody that has elite physical traits, has big-time physical upside. Mac Jones does not have that. You could even kind of debate just how much of that Justin Fields really has. Although he certainly has way more of it than Mac Jones does. But the guy with by far the most pure upside in this draft is Trey Lance. Either way, the 49ers know that they don't have that dude. And they're staring down the barrel of reality of they have the worst quarterback in the division. Russ is better. Stafford is better. Kyler Murray, you'd probably take over Jimmy G, wouldn't you? So they knew, not just for the now, but for the long term, that they had to change that position. You have to have that quarterback. So no complaints here about the 49ers making this move. They had to do it. They had to get a quarterback in this draft. They could not be so stubborn and stupid to think that Jimmy G was the long-term answer, because he wasn't. He just isn't. And it's been proven. Not just from on-field abilities alone, it's the lack of ability to be on the field and be available. That's as much of a concern as anything else. And if you're going to say, well, this is awful risky for the 49ers, you're goddamn right it is. No risk it, no biscuit, though. They couldn't sit there at 12 and wait for the dregs of whatever came through. If you've got your guy, then by God, go get your guy. Because if you don't come out of this draft with that guy, it's not going to matter. You'll be staring up at the rest of the division from the basement for the next 3 to 5 years. That's a fact. In terms of the Eagles, I think this deal makes a ton of sense too. Because if they weren't totally sold on a quarterback at 6, and they want to give Jalen Hurts a chance for another year, or they think him and Flacco are going to have some camp competition, oh God, whatever the case might be. Either way, for a team in as bad of a salary cap space as the Eagles were, the fact that they could trade back from 6 to 12 and in the process pick up an additional 4th-round pick this year and get a 1st-round pick next year makes sense on several levels. Number one, the Eagles can sit there at 12 now and take best offensive player or just best player available on the board and not be so worried about position. Meanwhile, they could pay that talent a few million less than they would have had to if they took somebody at 6. Again, thinking about the salary cap, thinking about the bigger picture. And when you're talking about a team like the Eagles in the salary cap space that they're in, and just in general, the tenor and tone of the organization, you got to look at it and say, you know what, you're preparing for the future here too, because you might have to make some other tough choices in the next couple of years. Having that extra 1st-round pick, it might help you to make that turnaround a little bit quicker. And they're also in a division that's not that great. So it can't necessarily take a whole lot to be right back in the mix. Bottom line is they've positioned themselves now in 2022. They'll have their own 1st-round pick in Miami's. And even if Miami's pick is going to be lower, which you would assume potentially that it is, it puts them in a powerful spot if they determine next year that Jalen Hurts isn't the guy. Now you go into the 2022 draft. If the Eagles pick is high and you've got Miami's pick somewhere in the 20s, something like that, they could potentially walk out of next year's draft with that long-term answer at the position. So from a financial standpoint, from a long-term vision standpoint, the deal makes a ton of sense for the Eagles. And then for the Dolphins. The way I was looking at it here, for them at 3, if they were going to go with Tua again this year, which I don't disagree with them doing, by the way, if they were going to do that, then drafting at 3 didn't seem very wise. I was thinking it's somebody like Carolina trading up to them, somebody like Detroit, somebody like San Francisco or Denver, somebody that's really desperate for a young quarterback that they could build a franchise around. Miami already took Tua last year, and if they're not prepared to move on from him after one season, then it makes no sense for them to draft at number 3. That's kind of a foolish thing to do because the value is there at quarterback at that point, or the market indicates that quarterback should go 3. It doesn't indicate that you potentially reach a little on a wide receiver or an offensive tackle at that spot. Now the Miami Dolphins have been able to move back 3 spots, like I said, get a couple of future picks, future first-rounders included, strengthening their position in future drafts. Meanwhile, still sitting there at pick 6, being able to take best offensive player available. Whether that ends up being a Jalen Waddle, or a Devontae Smith, or a Jamar Chase, or that's a Kyle Pitts, or it's an offensive lineman like Penei Sewell, or it's Rashawn Slater. Like, you look at the Dolphins there, to peel back 3 spots, they got additional draft pick capital to bolster their position in future drafts, which I've been a strong advocate of them doing, and they still put themselves in a position where they can get a great offensive talent to put around Tua Tagovailoa. That's exactly what the hell they should have been doing, and they've done it. And they still have their other first-round pick this year that they can get Froggy, and they can stay put, get Froggy, and move down from that 18th pick. They can sit there and trade up. Like, they could be players here, and big players. So I love what the Dolphins did. And like I said, it all comes down to execution. You can come back to this 3 years from now and say, well, the 49ers took the wrong quarterback and they look like clowns. Or you could say, well, the Dolphins screwed the pooch on their pick, so it doesn't matter. Or the Eagles did something stupid and it doesn't matter. And some or all 3 of them could look like total morons for having made this deal. And that is absolutely the case. We can't necessarily see the vision of the future right now. But what we can say is, based off of the facts and circumstances of what we know to be true right now, this deal absolutely, both of these trades, when you put them all together in one bucket, these trades made sense and worked for all 3 teams. All 3 teams, to me, doing the thing that they needed to do in this draft. So there's no criticism coming from me on this. At least if you're the Eagles and the Dolphins, you could say you acquired additional draft pick capital, so you're giving yourself more swings at the plate, more opportunities. Like, if you miss notably big somewhere, you've got a chance to make it up on the flip side. For the 49ers, though, it puts all the pressure in the world on that one pick, that 3rd overall pick. Once Lawrence and Wilson are gone, who's it going to be? And that's the only thing that matters. Did you foolishly trade up to get the 3rd best quarterback in this draft, and you're going to feel bad about that? Or when you look at some of the recent precedent of what seemed to be very strong quarterback drafts where you have 5 or 6 quarterbacks taken, and you have like 2018, and it was Josh Allen was the 3rd quarterback taken, and he was taken 7th overall. And Lamar Jackson was taken at tail end of round 1, and in his 2nd season he was league MVP. Or you go back to 83, and you say, yeah, you had Hall of Famers like John Elway taken 1 and Jim Kelly taken in the middle of that round. But you had other guys like Eason and fucking Todd Blackledge and Ken O'Brien that were taken ahead of the quarterback. The 6th quarterback drafted in that draft that year was Dan Marino, who went to the defending AFC champions and was league MVP in his 2nd season. So what you look at is a pretty strong quarterback class. It's kind of a bold move to go trading up because you could potentially be missing out on somebody else that could end up having a great career of themselves. But if you're the 49ers and you feel like somebody is that guy, then you have to go get that guy. You have no other alternative. You have to go get him, and you figure out the rest later. For those 49ers fans that maybe want those additional picks, like, what were you going to do with them anyways? Was there any guarantee that you wouldn't just be doing this in another year or 2? Why not start the clock now? You don't know what those future quarterback classes are going to look like. They could be great. They could be terrible. They could be mediocre. You could still be out of position to draft one of them. So you got a chance. It is better to start the clock now, swing for the fences now, and see what the hell happens. That's my thought.